Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Slap the Ask Show. We are up to episode 22. Luke, we've got a lucky number, 22. I feel like that's a magical number for all those people into that kind of stuff. But
we're also
yes, exactly. We got all this new material to try to promote our brand. Got the mugs, everything like that. But anyway, for episode 22, we have an extremely special guest. We have the infamous BigMike at BigMike Trades on Twitter on the show to join us to talk about his life and macroeconomic issues. So give you a little background about BigMike. BigMike is a bettor, a trader, and a world-renowned expert on finance, economics, sports, politics, and comedy. He's a graduate of the prestigious Bishop Sycamore High School, as well as the less prestigious Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. At the Wharton School, that's where the quarter-ton legend of FinTwit became known to Luke and I, and where we first met. Currently, BigMike lives in Manhattan with his smoking hot wife, Mrs. BigMike, in a nice penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, very close to the Park Ave, Billionaires Row statues. Only the best for BigMike and his smoking wife, Mrs. BigMike. He recently put on some weight, so out of respect for BigMike, we are going to hide his image and just show him when he was a bit more attractive and thinner, and it's the image that you see on Twitter. So without further ado, welcome to the show, BigMike Trades.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen. Nice to see both of you too.
Well, Mike, it's really a pleasure having you on. And
Big
thanks.
Mike.
Of course, yeah, BigMike. Apologies for misspeaking. So BigMike, I think the first question I want to ask you is, you are probably one of the world's leading experts in all things that we care about: finance, economics, sports, politics, and comedy. Across all those different genres, which one would you say is the one that you have the most passion about and you have the most knowledge about that you could share with us?
I mean, it's like picking your favorite child. Economics.
Economics?
I feel like every parent has a favorite, right?
So BigMike, we know that you went to
BigMike's one of two. You're one of like 80.
It's true. Yeah, I'm from a big family, lots of kids.
Anyways,
Catholics like to get it on, especially Irish Catholics with Italian heritage.
So we know your love for economics, BigMike. Is that part of the inspiration for going to the Wharton School of Business? And can you tell us a little bit about how you and Jimmy originally met and how we kind of all became friends?
Sure. So given my size, I was in the large stall. Jimmy had to take a massive dump, and he was waiting outside the stall for like 20 minutes. Then I got out, but I had stuffed the toilet up. So he walked in, and he couldn't go to the bathroom as he needed to because he likes the bigger one, so he could spread his legs and whatnot. And that's how we met. And he cursed me out, and I told him, "Hey, I'm sorry." And he said, "You showed me some genuine forgiveness, some empathy," and that's how Jimmy and I met.
Yeah, Mike, a BigMike. I remember that encounter vividly. And I think what I remember most from that is after you apologized to me and we kind of made up, and I went to take this massive dump in the nice big stall where generally handicap use, but I like to spread my legs too. Large people.
Yeah.
I noticed people's size. It affects a lot of people in this country, but I noticed you use all the toilet paper, and that really ticked me off.
No. We've never discussed this. There was no toilet paper in the beginning, so I actually had to use my hand. So that's why when you tried to shake my hand when we first met, I gave you knuckles only.
Ah, well. Now I feel even more sorry for my negative feelings towards you about the interaction.
Well, that was very thoughtful of you, BigMike, to give him the knuckles instead of the hand.
So, BigMike, I heard recently that the Biden administration tried to tap you to become Secretary of the Treasury, but unfortunately, the much more less qualified Janet Yellen.
Yeah, and Janet Yellen is the opposite of big. She's small. She's like 4'7". Her IQ is not perfect like BigMike's. She's married to George Akerlof, who himself is a terrible economist like Janet. The problem got these overeducated people with their PhDs think they know how to run a country. And, I think what we're learning is just because you have 3 letters after your name doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean you're an expert. You could be just as stupid as the person, who wrote it on Wikipedia. So, that's sort of what I love about FinTwit. Not that the people are stupid, but that, you have people who aren't as formally educated and they are brilliant. You've had people on your show who, with like the charts and with, the different ways that they do technical analysis, it's brilliant.
Mhm.
They have no formal training. You go to any business school, none of those idiots, they took the GMAT. Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, they don't know shit. So, I'm tired of these people with PhDs acting like they're better than the rest of us.
So Big Mike, do you and your
Yeah.
wife have kids? And if
We have,
so, or
well,
do you?
sorry. I cut you off.
No, but anyways, and if so, would you encourage them to go to college and to pursue higher education, or would that be something that you wouldn't promote?
If they want to go, if they have a specific goal that requires it, but as sort of like the rubber stamp I'm smart thing, I'm not so sure that I would do it. But I don't have kids with Mrs. Big Mike.
Right.
I may have kids with other people, but I don't know if that's the case.
I'm sure they'll come knock on your door one day. Anyway, so back to my question is about Janet Yellen and her being tapped as Secretary of the Treasury.
Mhm.
I was curious to know if you think that her view of economics being so wrong on how to run, policy in the country is purely based on the fact that she looks like a bird and is small, or do you think it has to do with just her years of living in this, like I said, bubble of higher education, theoretical economics that, if we look at it, the concept of fiat based economies is what, 50 years old, pretty much? Just the idea of
Bretton
just
Woods.
printing out money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's another concept. And Big Mike, something, if you want to know about Big Mike, you have to ask Big Mike about the euro. Big Mike thinks the euro is the stupidest idea that's ever been implemented on a wide scale. When you have fundamentally different economies with different, ways that different industries that drive the economy, different cultures, different retirement ages, different attitudes towards employment, unemployment, it's really hard to have a single currency there. And I think, this will never happen in the US. And I think, obviously the 50 states being in a union is important. But, you look at just the way different states are, there might be a state that like a different currency would be a thing. But, I'm not advocating for like Alabama having their own dollar. But, my point was going to be like, you look at the euro, all the experts, all the economists said, oh, this is a great idea. And then you look at it now and like, the UK left, other countries are going to leave. Germany and Greece were in like an economic Cold War. And, you can't trust the elites, guys.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And sorry to, take this question over Luke, but we just had on one of my friends, Nizzy Lord Conspiracies last week, and, talk about like the elites and everything like that. And one of these conspiracy theories, which I think is pretty, viable to believe, is this whole concept of like one global currency, right? The idea of all the nation states basically utilizing the same currency. And I was curious to know what your thoughts on that were, if you think that's a likely thing to happen, and B, a practical thing to happen, and C, a good thing to happen.
If all the countries had one currency?
Yeah, like this idea of like a global currency that everyone uses. I guess you could say right now it's the US dollar, but it's also not really. Only this Fed can actually create US dollars. So it's not like these other places can.
So I think it would fall under the thing that I was talking about, where currency or monetary policy is just like a tool to stimulate the economy or to destimulate it if it's overheating. So if you just look at like different countries, if you have one currency, you can only have one monetary policy. So I don't think that would be feasible. While we still have nation states, I don't think it's feasible or a good idea. But I missed that part of the prior episode though. But he's worried that there's going to be a global currency.
Well, not necessarily that particular issue, just the concept of like the elites like pulling the strings for everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, he believed that there's like an Illuminati that basically runs everything.
Well,
so it was a little more extreme.
Well, if there was an Illuminati that ran everything, Big Mike would be in it, probably leading it. So I can tell you that it's not a thing.
I could have guessed that one.
Yeah.
Well,
I wouldn't admit it if I was in it though.
Let's
So-
get into some theoretical things. So, first of all, would you consider yourself a capitalist?
Of course, as
Okay.
opposed to an idiot.
And the second question is, how did you get into trading, and what made you want to start a Twitter?
Two questions there. So
Two
what made
questions.
me interested in trading? Actually, when I was in elementary school, we did a project, and we had like a
Okay.
portfolio. We invested $100,000, and I remember I put almost all of it into Apple. And this was in, I don't want to reveal how old Big Mike is, but it was right before the iPhone came out. And I put all the money in Apple, and they announced the iPhone. Stock went up a fuck ton, and Big Mike made so much fake money that I was like, one day I will trade for real. They didn't call me Big Mike back then. They called me Fatty.
Right.
But the so trade, once I started to make money after graduating from Bishop Sycamore, summer jobs, and then from Wharton, I started putting my money in the market, and the past few years you've been getting some pretty good returns, even if you just put your money in the S&P. And then from you guys and your guests, started to dabble in OTC a little bit, because high risk, high reward. It's a little more interesting. Sports betting, basically all the bad decisions I've been making as a result of watching your show. But it's a joke.
So how
But,
much of your Twitter feed would you say is serious, and how much of it would you say is satirical or joking?
Well, I think a lot of it is serious, just said in a satirical way, if that makes sense. That like a lot of the crazy statements I've made are 100% true about my life.
So, Big Mike, I think
Yeah.
it's time for Jimmy and I to put you on the spot here with some of your tweets.
Oh no.
And
I'm not showing you a picture of Mrs. Big Mike. If that's what the goal of this was.
no.
Was this an
not
ambush? You tried to get Big Mike on the show so you see his wife. My wife's in the other room, so you're not going to be able to see her.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't expect her to
Unfortunate.
be in the back. Maybe we could bring her on the show one time. But anyways, all right, let's go to a tweet from 6 days ago.
Oh no.
Big Mike tweeted, "My fantasy team has pulled off an upset against Jimmy this week. A lesson to you all, never give up hope." Is that tweet true?
It is true. Jared Cook,
I can confirm it's true.
who I'm about to drop because I got Dawson Knox and Dalton Schultz, but
All right, Mike.
yeah.
Let's go on another tweet from October 3rd.
Okay.
He said, "Big Mike's out for another Sunday Manhattan run. Hope to be sub 400 by 2022. Did you actually go on a run on October 3rd?
Yes.
Okay.
Was that when I was on 69th Street? The last time I went on a run, I posted
You're
I
on
was on
Second Ave. Yep.
and 69th.
Yes.
Yeah, no one commented on that part. Anyway, go on.
Well, I was gonna say, no, I remember back in school, Mike actually was, again, what I call the quarter ton legend. So, 500 pounds. So being
They
under
wouldn't let
400 would
me.
be
They wouldn't let
legendary.
me on the second floor of the gym because they were too worried that it might collapse. It might pancake, like that building in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we played pot truck and you were like trying to jump up and grab rebounds. Everyone got scared. It was like, oh shit, is there an earthquake going on? But it was just you trying to grab some boards.
It's true. That's why I'm glad you guys are using the picture of me from when I was skinny. So
I will say,
Of
Mike,
course.
Big Mike, you actually have a decent amount of educational tweets.
I know, and everyone thinks the account is a joke. If they saw what I really looked like, and that was my picture, they wouldn't take me seriously. That's a problem with fat phobia in this country. But no, I post a lot of educational stuff. I've made maps. I have a little bit of my New York bravado, and people don't take it seriously sometimes.
Okay, so let's read one of your tweets and let's explain the analogy behind this.
Yes.
You said on September 22nd, you said, "Imagine if you had a country where money was distributed to 100 people, but then 70 people died and the money had to be redistributed. You'd expect the remaining 30 people to be richer, right? That's what's happening with the OTC." Can you explain that analogy and what ended up happening there?
Well, when some of the stocks were delisted, people who were going to invest in those would instead invest in other stocks. So I was pointing out that, you know, when someone dies, the money goes somewhere else, and, you know, investments transfer and whatnot. It was a silly analogy, Luke.
I thought it was very good.
Well,
I liked
I actually originally had it, but I deleted the tweet, and I said, imagine an island where there are only where there are 100 men and like 100 women. 70 of the men die. Aren't the 30 men going to get laid more often, like per person, per capita? But I think that one was a little bit more confusing. I try and keep the account family friendly. So.
Well, Mike, I was going to say,
You
I
didn't
think
do
the
a very good
analogy.
job of that tweet.
Well, I was going to say, I think the analogy that you ended up posting with the redistribution of wealth, I can't help but think that there were some communist undertones with that statement, and I hope that.
Well, no, think about it. If someone dies and they have money, the money goes to somebody else. That's not communism. The communists are the ones who want to tax it at 100%.
That's true. That's a good point.
They don't believe inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth. Could you believe that?
Mike, do you think there should
right?
be Big Mike? Do you think there should be a flat tax?
Flat tax?
Yeah.
No, you fucking communist. There should be 0% tax.
So you're a full blown anarchist at this point.
I'm an anarcho-capitalist. No,
All right.
my views on taxes are more nuanced.
Okay. So let's kind of like circle back to Mike and buying Apple stock, back when the iPhone first came out.
Mhm.
Oh, shortly after that happened, we have the great financial recession,
Mhm.
and the concept of quantitative easing was implemented, right?
Oh,
In
no.
order to stabilize asset prices, things like that.
Mhm. Or inflate them.
Inflate them is probably a better term to use.
Yeah.
So do you think in this world where we have monetary policy that could just be utilized to theoretically or practically just create money and result in all these asset price inflation, do you think that that is actually what is creating a wealth gap in this country, as opposed to having more controlled or more free market type of economics happening?
I think those are two issues, but I think you raise a good point, which is that when the Fed buys these things and they add these assets and they add them to their balance sheet and inflate the price, it's interesting. Big Mike's thesis in college, actually, I looked at in the 2016 election in places where people were more likely to have stocks invested, or retirement accounts or something where the market affected them. Were they voting based upon like just their social issues because they could kind of hedge their bets? So if like Trump won, you can invest in all like Trump stuff, or if Hillary won, you can invest in stuff that would go up if Hillary won. And what I found was that richer people were investing just based upon their social issue, abortion or gay marriage or something. They didn't care as much about the economic issues. But my point there is that, richer people, wealthier people are the ones who have assets that will inflate. Poorer people won't. So I definitely think it could exacerbate the wealth gap. I think, a Keynesian analysis would say that you could just, if you wanted to stimulate the economy, it wouldn't be monetary policy, or I guess it could if you just print the money. You just pay people to dig holes and pay other people to, put the dirt back in. Just getting money in the system. Yeah.
Yeah. So like kind of back to that point though, like, do you think Keynes, like I guess every Western nation at this point is kind of Keynesian based when it comes to monetary policy, right? Government spending. I know like the government's now like a third of the GDP of the country right now. It was much lower in decades in the past. Do you think that is like almost a bad way to have the economic model be built around, like this whole idea of Keynesian economics, where government spending is the get out of jail card for a recession? Because it seems like it's.
I mean, there's a sweet spot, I think, but I feel eventually, you're getting into the MMT territory, right? Where why can't you just keep spending money infinitely? They call it MMT. I call it the Zimbabwe School of Economics, and it didn't work out too well for them.
Well, and that's why I always tell Luke, I was like, or I bring up this idea is like the idea is like maybe this modern monetary theory, just fucking keep on government spending, government printing, works if the USD is the reserve currency of the world, right? In a world where that's not the case, maybe you do have the Zimbabwe situation happen, right? Where no one wants your dollars anymore.
It's true, but then you're going to end up with inflation. It's I think I don't know how much of a difference there is between MMT and just classical Keynesian economics. Just you know, Keynesian would say that if you just printed money and spent shit, you would have a short-term economic gain. It would just be offset by inflation. I don't. Is the distinction with MMT that there's never going to be inflation because it's just idiotic.
Right. And I guess it doesn't also.
Although in fairness, we've had ridiculous amounts of spending and borrowing in recent years, and I think Trump and Biden both were part of it. And well, I guess inflation's becoming a problem now, but not at like Zimbabwe or Weimar Germany levels.
Right. And I guess like if you want to dive even deeper, like MMT, modern monetary theory and Keynesian economics, like I guess it also operates under the assumption of higher levels of like reaching true employment, full employment and production levels, things like that. And that's not happening right now. So we have, you know, like stagflation, as they say. It is kind of crazy to think about. We have, you know, we as a country and as the monetary policy kind of decided that printing money is a way to solve our problems. But when push comes to shove, we actually just need the resources. Like we have what I think UK has a major natural gas problem right now. The truckers are basically just not delivering the gas and prices are exploding. We have coal in China is at all-time highs. Lebanon has been dark for 2 days just because they don't have enough resources to create energy. And that's something I feel like can't be pushed. That can't be like solved by just creating money. So I think, you know, in 20 years from now, what's happening today is going to be what all these PhDs study. And we'll see what responses they come up with to prevent some of this happening in the future. So I guess I'm not sure how questions created from that statement, but
well, I think a question that you could create from that station is do you think that printing more money is the solution, and what would be your solution, Big Mike?
My solution to what?
To the inflation problem in the United States and across the world.
I think that
Do you think it's a fiat-backed like stable coin or something along those lines, or do you think it's just regulation policy?
I mean, I lean towards the more classical tools of policy. I think having the low interest rates forever was, you know, kind of bound to be a problematic policy. But then, you know, if they raise rates now, people are going to panic. So we're kind of tough.
It's in a perpetual cycle.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, as 5 years ago, Larry Summers said you should just print $500 and give it to every family, and that was before coronavirus. That's just the way to stimulate the economy, because it was secular stagnation. That's what they were calling it, where it was just, you know, GDP growth was low, 2% for several years, and it was just, you know, there's no reason for it. Just the way things are right now. And then, you know, the tax cuts under Trump stimulated the economy, and people are scared it was going to be inflationary, and maybe, you know, what we're seeing now is residual from that. But I think what people learned there, as Jimmy had said before, was just that the you know, the natural rate of unemployment, the structural unemployment, was lower than what people had thought it was. So that, you know, when unemployment went to 3% or whatever it was, you know, the world didn't go on fire with inflation right away. But then, you know, I think all economic analysis, I think, is very hard to pin down, because I still think we're, you know, in the midst of a pandemic and the after effects, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I think it's impossible to know how things would have gone differently under Trump or under Biden the last 10 months.
So do you think where we went wrong was going off the gold standard? Or do you think it was
No,
because I know our good friend Bill Carlin believes that was the root of all issues.
No, I don't think that was the root of all issues. I mean, I understand the argument for having the gold standard, but I don't think that was the case. Although, you know, it's interesting when you think about that renegotiation of Bretton Woods. When the original Bretton Woods agreement came out after World War II, I think, or in the late 30s, it was Keynes represented the UK and Morgenthau represented the US, and the US gave policies for creditor, like they strong-armed their way into getting policies for like international exchange that would help creditor nations. And little did they know, in, you know, 60 years, the United States was going to be debtor nation. These policies were going to fuck us, but it's an issue for another time.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like how I feel like you're right. Like thoughts on economics, I feel like it's hard to be forward looking with it, right? It's you kind of always just reevaluate what has happened in the past, and use that
Right.
information to kind of go forward, and make decisions.
Mhm.
So Mike, I know that you, Big Mike, I know you live in New York City,
Mhm.
native New
Shithole.
Yorker as well.
Yeah.
Spent time in Philadelphia, but
Mhm.
kind of question to you about New York and other big cities is,
Mhm.
do you think that the rapid urbanization of the country is in a way creating these types of policies that are becoming popular that are just not practical? I saw that Gavin Newsom today signed a law
He's the
banning,
worst.
banning combustion engine powered lawnmowers and like leaf blowers and other landscaping tools in California, new sales of them in the year 2024. And me speaking personally, I feel like, someone that lives in an apartment in a city, that who gives a shit? You're not doing your own lawn, things like that. But I feel like, if you live out in the country, like where
Mhm.
Luke's from, you probably want to ride on gas powered mower. So would you say that this rapid urbanization of the country, and like these ideas like how energy is consumed and created, things like that, is contributing to a further divide in how people are thinking
It could.
about policy measures?
I do. I think a lot of those policies, they don't affect. I think the Democrats like to think that the average Joe, when the policy like that comes out, is like, oh, like some rich guy who's cutting his lawn in his mansion. And especially even in California, where like 40% of the state's Republican, a large part of the state's pretty rural. If you think about all those counties in the north and in the eastern part of the state on the border with like Arizona and Nevada, those are the people who get affected by the policies. I'm not sure if this is an unpopular view, but I think that those kinds of policies are kind of like pat yourself on the back policies. But if you actually believe climate change is a real thing and you look at the data, you're going to need even stronger policies against it that will probably be worse for everybody, but like they're bad for people too. But people act like living in the city is so eco-friendly. I mean, I sitting next to my gigantic air conditioning unit that probably uses more energy than a small Caribbean nation. So the people in the cities cause problems as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you say that, just because I feel like when it comes to like living in the city,
Mhm.
you're probably less self-sufficient, right? The idea is like everything you kind of just buy on your own and things like
Mhm.
that. You also deal with a lot more people, whereas
Oh,
people in the
yeah.
rural
People are the
land,
worst.
yeah, like whereas I feel like in the rural parts of the country, you have to be more self-sufficient. It's now 15-minute drive or whatever to get anything you need.
Mhm.
So people are maybe more inclined to, uh, you know, maybe grow their own food and do shit like that to
Mhm.
make sure that they survive. But no, yeah, I that's kind of one thing I've like personally been really questioning a lot is what is America going to look like in 50 years from now? Like, I feel like now when we look at our grandparents and like the retirement, usually move to like maybe a home if you get too old, or you move
Mhm.
out of the city down south where it's warm, things like that.
Mhm.
But I wonder, like, is it going to be commonplace for people in our generation to be like 45 years old and living in apartments in the city, raising their kids, as opposed to moving out to the suburbs and things like that?
Well,
That's
Jimmy,
like
I think the question that you're bringing up though, it's kind of like cyclical, right? I mean, when you look out through history, people generally they are educated in more urban areas, they stay in the city and they move out to the suburbs. Right now we're in a cycle where people are going to the cities, but I think we hit for the first time it was like 50% of Americans were living in urban environments, and then it dropped back down to like 46. So like there's always going to be that cycle, but I think generally we're moving towards more people being in urban environments because that's where the jobs are, right? The
But
good
I mean,
point.
coronavirus with telecommuting now, maybe the
Well, yeah,
trend will
that's true.
reverse
I
even
mean, now
more.
you can live wherever you want. You can work from home. So, I mean, maybe we'll see the opposite cycle. I
And I
mean,
feel
who
like,
Yeah.
knows?
yeah, and to that point, like I feel like coronavirus almost made the incentive of living in the city non-existent, right?
Hmm.
Because the whole point is you get to go out to all the nice restaurants and do all the cultural activities. When that's shut down, it's like, why would I be in the city at this point?
I mean,
Now I just deal with the high
Right.
crime and other
The
that's
problems.
yeah,
how, yeah, I mean, that's how cities work. Think about cities on like a competitive level. They try and attract the top talent. Getting rich, talented people to your city makes it a better city. It attracts other rich, talented people.
big
Um,
companies. Yeah.
exactly, big companies want to go. I mean, that was at HQ2 with Amazon. Where are they going to go? If Albany, no offense to Albany, New York, or any of listeners from Albany, New York, but if Albany thought they were going to compete with Long Island City, it's just a high school team versus Bishop Sycamore versus the Buccaneers.
So kind of going off of that, Big Mike, what are your thoughts on like New Yorkers moving out of the city, moving south? What are your thoughts on like Tesla moving their corporate headquarters from Palo Alto to Austin, Texas? Do you think that's a trend that we're going to continue to see, or do you think California and New York are going to start changing their policies to keep this talent?
They're gonna have to. I mean, New York, I think, is that we keep losing congressional seats. We would have gotten an additional congressional seat in the last census if 87 more people were counted or something like that. It was less than 100.
Wow.
So people are leaving the city, the state even too. People are attracted to lower taxes. Like I said, don't think about states and cities like states and cities. If you think about them like companies that need to attract customers, why would you live in New York City or locate in New York City? You have to pay I pay like a 3.4% additional income tax on top of my high New York State income tax on top of my federal income tax. But if my company was in Greenwich, Connecticut,
or if you could just work remotely, right?
Yeah, I could work remotely. I could be based in Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, Kathy Woods, did you see her hedge fund is moving to Tampa Bay? I don't know if you saw that.
No.
From Manhattan. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why would I'll tell you, Big Mike's a management consultant. That's there at least until he quits in a rage in the next couple of weeks. But the client I'm working for now is a national chain of store. I won't give the name, but like I'm talking to these people and like the CEO is in Florida, the COO is in Pennsylvania. I'm talking like random account directors. They're like, oh, I'm in Oklahoma. And I'm just like, it's crazy how these national brands, these companies, people aren't all in one office now. Like, I don't know if it was like that before the pandemic. I've only dealt with them in the post-pandemic world, but it's nuts to me that like you could just have people all over. And like, family reasons or friends, that's one thing, but like, why would you want to be in New York if you don't have like a connection to New York anymore? I think Broadway gets old. It's in the summer, it's disgustingly hot. The crime, it's like a fucking portal to 1975. You walk through Midtown, you're putting your life in God's hands every time. So, why wouldn't you want to move to Fort Lauderdale and, be on the, if it's going to be disgustingly hot, at least you could have the beach around, not have to, smell the urine and feces and garbage on the street. So but besides that, New York's great.
I was going to say, so why do you stay in New York? Well, I guess your job's there and that's kind of where you grew up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you, Mike. I think, to Jimmy's point, he was saying, people are just moving out, and with everyone working from home, there's no reason for you to stay, right? Especially the high. I mean, I know in Philadelphia alone, we have like a 6% city tax. We might have lower state taxes, but like the city tax is terrible. So it's like
you have the city tax. You have the gross receipts tax, which is the stupidest tax I've ever heard of, which is the tax on revenue. Right. How do you tax revenue?
It's absolutely bonkers.
It's a very small tax in fairness, but you tax revenue.
Yeah, it's tough. And again, kind of like makes I think operating a business in the city a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, like why wouldn't you put it in Delco or Montgomery County or Chester County? Like,
well, that's what a lot of companies do. They have their corporate office outside of the city. They pay their taxes there, even though they do business in the city.
And what ends up happening is, you like Schuylkill Yards by 30th Street Station. You like the cities will give these individual deals and tax. Trump tried to do this too, and like you try and keep carrier around, like, oh, we'll give you some, 10 years, you don't have to pay any corporate taxes if you stay. And like you end up in this situation where it's, it's like a cycle where, oh, we can keep giving them these sweetheart deals to stay, or the companies will arbitrage and we'll move to this county next where they'll give us a deal. We'll move here next. Right. It's not like it was in the old days when a company was like, we're part of the community. And like, we're going to stay here. The taxes aren't a business consideration. They're just given.
And not even with moving to other states, they're moving to other countries. Not even state.
Yeah, offshoring is a problem too.
And well, I think this kind of goes back to like my point about the Federal Reserve and the kind of the policies of coronavirus. Mm-hmm. It seems like what's happening is America and the rest of the world is being like much more corporatized and Wall Street based, as opposed to being Main Street centered. You know, everyone, all the politicians when they run, they love to talk about like Main Street's the backbone of the United States, blah blah blah. But their policies are the exact opposite. You know, especially now with like the idea of inflation being at levels unseen in decades. You know, Main Street businesses are being the ones being hurt the most. So again, like I think this kind of goes back to the whole concept of the Federal Reserve, right? Like you have BlackRock now buying up all these single family homes simply because they have a reserve at the Federal Reserve, account at the Federal Reserve, and borrow the money at 0 rates, and they can outbid you for buying single family homes. So again, I'm trying to think of a way to ask a question, but like, do you think that this model is like sustainable, as in like the idea of everyone now will have to essentially work for a large company or found a large company is kind of how things are going to go down, I feel like, as opposed to individuals starting their own businesses on Main Street and contributing to their own communities and hiring locally, things like that?
It's a great question, Jim. And it goes to this change in antitrust thinking in the 70s. Remember, Robert Bork, I don't know if the name rings a bell from history class, but the Chicago school basically had this idea of antitrust where the only thing that you worried about was the impact of prices on end consumers. So like if AT&T and Verizon wanted to merge, and you're able to do the economic analysis and showed that actually prices for consumers were going to go down, the school of thought, which I think has taken over, would say, oh, that's fine. Or if this gigantic company was going to enter into the neighborhood run by mom and pop florists, say 1-800-Flowers moved in. I don't even know if they have storefronts, but there is no consideration to like the non-end consumer effects of things. So like if basically they were saying the only factor that you need to decide if like a decision of these big companies coming in or not is if it would lower prices for end consumers. And if it did that, then that was great. And fuck mom and pop businesses, like they could die. All they do is make prices more expensive because they're not efficient. And I think there should be a change in the way people think about that. I think you have to think about like general life considerations also when you're having policy like that. What was that noise? Is that are we talking about sports now? I heard a.
Yeah, let's actually pivot.
Probably pivot into sports betting, because I know you've been big into sports betting lately.
I've been going to New Jersey.
I was just gonna say, is it true that you drive into New Jersey to place your bets before?
I did that once, but I'm in New Jersey. I work out of New Jersey a couple of times a week, and I place my bets there. Okay. I put some bets on the game tonight.
Did you?
What do you got going?
This episode will be released on Tuesday, October 12th. So those watching can see if
fast turnaround.
Yeah, we can see if Big Mike's bets were actually good. So what are they?
Hold on, let me get them.
So
my best bet ever in the week or two that I've been doing this, where I bet on a Giancarlo Stanton home run in that Yankees Red Sox sudden death game, and he hit one with like 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth in garbage time.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's always awesome. That's like a buzzer beater.
My DraftKings isn't loading. Hold on, give me a second.
It's always janky with those apps. I feel like they don't.
Well, they have to like verify your location and shit.
What sucks is my FanDuel account was made in Pennsylvania, and they won't let me bet in New Jersey with it.
Oh, really? Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah, so when I'm in Pennsylvania visiting my boys, like you guys, I'll use FanDuel, but then when I'm in Jersey, I got to use DraftKings.
I think each state.
I think DraftKings is a better app overall, but I think the odds on FanDuel are better sometimes. Like one of my bets last night was Buffalo Bills money line against the Chiefs. DraftKings
that was a great bet, by the way.
Thank you. I saw it from a mile away. I was like, the Bills are a sick team. They're gonna beat the Chiefs. Chiefs suck. But anyway, I saw DraftKings offered plus 125 and FanDuel offered 130. So I'm gonna take the 130 over the 125. And that's what I always compare the odds on each app.
So I have Colts defense to get over 0.5 sacks and 0.5 interceptions.
Okay.
I have Carson Wentz to throw at least one interception.
Given
Mark, yeah, I know. I mean, I wish you gave me the option to choose like multiple interceptions, but Mark Andrews, the first touchdown scorer, or Lamar Jackson, the first touchdown scorer. Then I put money on, it was like their special parlay, Lamar Jackson and Jonathan Taylor combined for 2 touchdowns or more. I guess it's not.
Okay. Nice. So, Mike, when you make your Big Mike, when you make your sports bets, what's your strategy? I feel like you deploy a lot of parlays.
Yeah, I just
Like,
want
what's
to
your
hit
thought
big.
process?
I have a
Okay.
lot of money to burn. I want to hit one big, and then I could say, oh, my 8-way parlay paid off.
I do this. I love like scrolling on Instagram and Twitter and
See,
seeing like someone with like a plus 4,000 odds
I
parlay
know.
hitting. You're like, holy shit! Like,
I had this debate with Jimmy though. I'm like, all these people you see on Twitter, they have like 8-way parlays that are like so hard to hit. They have incredible returns, but it's like the amount of
It's
money
like the
you spend.
OTC.
Yeah, well, sports betting is worse than investing in
It's
stock.
true because there's no
But
value that's retained. You
yeah, and
can't.
also there's
Yeah.
literally setting the odds to not be in your favor, and then they're
Yes.
taking money off the top. But
Yeah. Mhm.
no, what I was saying is like you see all these crazy bets with these 8-way parlays. You see like the one winner on Twitter, and you think that everyone's winning, but in
Mhm.
reality, they're never hitting. And it'd be better just to bet like the money line or the spread or something. So,
Yeah.
but if
Just
you have
bet on
money to
winners.
burn, if you have money to burn
My
like Big
wife
Mike
hates it.
doesn't like it.
She doesn't. No, I've had to cut back on the fancy dinners, but you know, when one of them hits, she'll be sitting prettier than she is now.
Oh, you got to keep
Oh,
the
yeah.
wife happy.
You do. Well, especially, I mean, she's beautiful. I mean, there was that guy, 100 a million, with the really nice voice you guys interviewed a few weeks ago, but she didn't.
Fantastic voice. Fantastic.
I was worried.
Voice.
Yeah, he has a fan. You know, I'm self-conscious about my voice. Yeah, Silly Sheep was supposed to be on too.
Oh yeah, he's busy with work and everything. We'd love to get him on next time with a big panel.
We do need the panel. Yeah, no, he's a good. You know, Finchwood's very supportive community. A lot of people. You know, Big Mike's a character, but a lot of support.
Very, very
Finchwood people.
supportive until they're not. But yes, overall.
No one
pretty
will turn on
supportive.
Big Mike.
Oh no, he's too lovable.
Yeah,
But,
who can resist this space?
What was the question?
Yeah. So my question was back to like kind of sports betting is.
Yeah.
I think what changes the way you gamble on sports is when you realize Vegas just wants 50% of the money on one side and the other 50% on the other side.
Mhm.
And you feel like there's a disconnect there, you can take advantage of it. Like in hindsight, like if you looked back at the games last week or yesterday on Sunday, there's like I think it was the Vikings-Lions game. The Vikings were plus 8.5 points against the Lions.
Yeah, it was
Like in
I saw the Lions.
hindsight, you take the Lions every time. The Lions are not losing that much to
They almost beat.
like-
They've lost 2 weeks in a row on long field goals at the last second.
exactly. Yeah, and I feel like now with the prevalence of gambling, everyone's fucking gambling these days on their phone.
Mhm.
And I feel like there's not a lot of research going to like these people's picks. They just see Lions 0-4, Vikings, whatever, 1-3 at the time. They're like, all right, Lions suck, dead Vikings. Like
Well,
I feel
Chip,
like
there's a reason for that. It's that people are fucking stupid.
it's true. I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm dumb. We're all dumb. We're also smart in our own ways, but yeah, like you said, yeah, people are dumb.
No, I'm saying, you know, people who could look at that and they go, oh, well, this team's 0-4, like they have to be, you know, losing by a lot to this team. I mean, the Texans lost like 800-0 against the Bills, and then they almost lost to the Patriots. So,
right.
I mean, they almost beat the Patriots.
Yeah, they kept it close. Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
lost by 3. I think they covered.
Yeah,
at the end of the
Davis
day.
Mills. What's that guy's name? Davis Mills, the quarterback.
Yeah,
Also, I gotta feel sorry for. I'm assuming they'll put Tyrod Taylor back in, but gotta feel sorry for the guy that's just perpetually injured. But Mills went from like, you know, throwing for like 40 yards and 8 interceptions to having a pretty decent game against the Patriots. So
yeah, I actually like David Mills. I don't think he's bad, but yeah, Tyrod Taylor, he's like a sad case in the NFL. He's one of those guys who is so.
I'm telling you,
good.
you know, this was Luke was going through my old tweets. You know, I was saying the Giants really should hire the Chargers team doctor for last year. Give him a second chance. Not that you think not that
I was
he'll
gonna say the
repeat.
Giants need it. I remember we were watching that game yesterday. Everyone was getting injured. Even the Cowboys had a lot of injuries.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing.
Not like the
Yeah,
Giants,
they're-
man. Daniel Jones basically was executed at the goal line. Saquon Barkley, another ankle injury.
Hey, Big
Yeah,
Mike, I will
Saquon-
say, Big Mike, I bet the Eagles money line Sunday and it hit, and Jimmy was talking trash.
You could never trust Sam Darnold. Once he was on the Jets, he's forever tainted.
That's
He'll
what
never
Jimmy
be
and I
good.
were saying. We were saying he's
Yeah.
not a winner. He's talented, but he's not a winner. So
Yeah, and I mean, especially the end of that Eagles game, like the block punt.
I mean, the
Like
Eagles.
that threw it open. Like that's like, all right, well, Eagles now have a shot.
Yeah, but anyway, sports betting, so hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
Only play with don't play with your rent money.
Mm-hmm.
Play with your rent money in penny stocks. It's much more
Yes.
much
Mhm.
better.
Yeah, but anyway, let's wrap it up. Mike,
You want to talk
Big
about
Mike.
love?
No.
No.
Do you have a comment on love? On this? Leave a comment on love.
Let's leave with a comment on your philosophy for life. Let's do that.
That's interesting. That's a good question.
It can be I don't know. It can be financial. How about give your financial philosophy on life?
No, I won't. It won't necessarily be financial, but I think, and especially in FinTwit, where the Fin stands for
Financial.
finance. Yeah, something like that. Is that what it is? I never knew that.
It is financial Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, money should be an important factor when making decisions, but it can't be the only factor. And whether for a job or life or going on vacation or something like that, you shouldn't be financially irresponsible, but you shouldn't let a fear of losing money or spending money dictate everything that you do. So I think that's a problem. So I think it's great for people who make money, trading, betting or OTC stocks, but you gotta live a little bit too. You gotta have fun.
Yeah.
So you gotta treat yourself, as some would say.
And
So,
Big Mike definitely has fun. So
big food budget.
Well, on that note, Big Mike, thanks for coming on the show. It was great talking with you.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you too. I love you both dearly. If any of you ever needed a kidney or something like that, I'd get one from the black market for either of you guys. So
well,
I would happily take that kidney. I would happily take.
Thank you very much, Jimmy and I will have to get dinner with you and your wife sometime in Manhattan if things are open there.
Yeah,
So.
well, you and your bottle of lotion will pay for both of you.
that tweet was misconstrued in the biggest way, but thank you for pointing that out.
Mhm.
All right, guys.
Anyways,
Take care.
Thank you, Big Mike. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. Have to do it again
Of
sometime.
course.
Yeah, we'll have Silly Sheep with you next time.
Mhm.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Later, everybody.